Welcome to Gray Overload. I'm Anthony, and I want to talk today about some of AMD's, you know, CPUs and what I kind of see of kind of going forward of what may potentially happen, and kind of what AMD is cooking over there on their CPU side, which is it's kind of interesting, right? Because we see Intel go through and create this performance core and efficient core, and that was really interesting. I got a 12th gen laptop sitting right here. I've been using it. Very interesting stuff to have that split, and while it does help with battery life and everything else, you can also run into different issues. But I think that as they've gone along, they've worked with OSs and with their thread director and kind of made that less of a problem source. But I'm sure that you can still run into issues, as with all technology, that when you have these kind of splits, if you don't have the exact same instruction set, you can run into some issues. And this is going to be interesting as Intel continues to play with performance cores and efficient cores. They're going to increase core counts. They're going to have certain performance benefits over AMD that has not been doing any of that, and it's just been all big cores so far. And what AMD I think is going to start doing is start attacking Intel with their own type of P core and E core, except it's just going to be a P core and a P core slim, right? Or P core slow. And this is a little bit different because we've already seen now with AMD announcing their server side stuff a couple weeks ago is that they had Zen 4 and Zen 4c. So you had your Zen 4 and then the Zen 4c, which is a lot more core counts. The die area for the cores between Zen 4 and Zen 4c is much smaller, so you can fit a lot more cores in the same area. And this is, let's say you need something more parallel rather than you need something higher boost. You go with the Zen 4c, you get a whole bunch of more cores, and your power is going to be sipping. You don't get as high as boost, but you get these a lot of cores to be able to tackle the tasks you have. And when you think about AI, right, we're still in the infancies of AI and what's going to be done. If you remember, Google had tensor cores and everything else. We're still waiting for the 5th generation of that. We have GPUs. Google or NVIDIA is trying to push those like crazy. And now there's even some stuff where CPUs are doing a lot of work. Well, what if it happens to be that AMD is going down, and we saw MI300 already, of what is supposed to be coming out later this year, which was MI300A, which is the GPU or CDNA and Zen cores on one chip. And this is where you kind of get this chiplet technology kind of working towards your benefit. So now you got this huge chip and you got your GPUs, you got your CPUs on it. Well, what's stopping them to also combine it to have a Zen4c, Zen4 cores, as well as your CDNA on a massive chip, so that you can perform your AI tasks the way you wish and be able to offload everything, and have a balanced chip. AMD could make you a custom chip like that. You could get a semi-custom and be able to have very performant for you the workload that you've identified and that you're working with. I think that there's a lot of potential here going forward to be able for AMD to actually provide something valuable to the market, right? You know, the nice thing is that with so much technology out there with NVIDIA, Intel, the tensor cores, all this other stuff, is that there's room for innovation, right? Each of these companies have to differentiate in some way, and AMD is kind of going through a little bit of that, and they need to do more. I think the chiplet architecture is just starting of what they're capable of doing. I mean, they have 3D V-cache, HBM, they have all these technologies that they can kind of piece together that is going to really, I think, help them in the future to create a product that is able to compete in the market with everybody else as well. And every company's trying to do that. And today I'm talking about AMD. Another time I'll talk about another company. But the desktop side of things, right? I'm a desktop user for the most part. I am working a lot on building code, whatever else. I'm getting more into 3D stuff, all those other aspects. Currently, I have a 2nd gen Threadripper in here. I've had a 1st gen as well. But you look at what the Threadrippers have. What is stopping AMD from kind of making a hybrid chip for these Threadrippers. So you have, some people say 64 cores, 128 cores. That's a lot of cores already. No desktop user needs that. But I see in workstations where you could easily see that if you can fill up, go quad channel, start filling up the RAM, get anywhere 512, a terabyte of RAM in there. There are sequences where people are going to be able to use that. And what happens if their workload is no longer just, I need a huge core, I need a huge fast core, but what happens if we just stuff a whole bunch of these Zen4c cores in there and they just have an amazing parallel system for what their exact needs are? That is a whole nother side of things that you could do. Then you also have the side of things where on the desktop side, Intel is, cramming just a ton of cores into these chips, right? Because they have these efficient cores that they're able to do that. So now we go through and AMD can maybe put 8 cores, an 8-core chiplet of Zen4, Zen5, whatever, our Zen architecture we're at that point. Then take, the equivalent C core and throw that in there. You have the same architecture on it. Who knows, they may be even different processes of manufacturing, of node manufacturing there. You have a I/O die that may also have a different manufacturing. Who knows, at that point, maybe they even take off the iGPU in there, and that's also another little chiplet where they have, some RDNA cores of some type in there, and maybe it's an RDNA slash CDNA, some type of, even if you have a few cores, that could also be a part of a compute until you throw your GPU in there. Or assistive, Intel has all these, different technologies on their video side of their iGPU, what is it, QuickSync and all this other stuff that have been performant in helping assistive tasks throughout there. AMD can even put in Xilinx on there and do those accelerators there. All of a sudden you're creating this chip on the desktop side. Yes, it's more complex, but I think it's going to start going through and start being able to compete with different elements of it and really provide you a full chip that can do, even if it's just lighter than the server tasks, I think that you can start doing some local processing of these AI stuff and everything else. These assistive, making things faster on your computer, making you get your work done faster. And in the desktop and laptop space, in that user space, is not a bad place to even bring out some of this technology to see if it's something that works well, can be well tested and everything else, and flush out bugs there. It's a little bit more safe than putting it on the server side. I believe the 7040 laptop chips have some Xilinx on them, some Xilinx accelerators if I recall correctly. So these are just some of the things that are going through my head, and I'm going, oh, AMD can put these compact cores. Let's say you do 8. Let's say then you have another 16 of these C cores on that chip. All of a sudden you're looking at a total of 24 cores right there. Let's go and who knows? Let's say that they have threads on just the big cores and not the little cores. Who knows how that all goes as we move forward with all threads. But you have a very performant chip, and your scheduler just has to understand that, what do I need? Do I need the speed cores? Are the speed cores filled? Let's flow over to the, the dense cores. And even though they're the same core, they all compute the same. It's just the clock speed that's different. And that's a little bit different than the Intel side currently today. Who knows, maybe Intel goes on the same road, but these are just things that AMD could do. AMD can add, put this in, have the I/O die. You can even do stacked memory on maybe even the C core, because I think that gets rid of the L3 cache, I think. So let's say you need more cache, you could do stuff like that and help your cooling out. There's all sort of different things that AMD could do. Think of a X3D chip where both the C cores and the big cores have 3D V cache, and you have RDNA on there. Let's say RDNA also has 3D V cache, so that they have some chips that you can offload think of it, there's all these possibilities now that AMD can actually bring out and deliver. And this is just, me just talking. I'm not breaking any rumors, nothing like that. I'm just thinking about what is capable of, and maybe I really want to do this with Intel, because some of the rumors and stuff that are out there, even NVIDIA, you just start thinking about what can happen. Who knows? Maybe none of this actually does happen, but what can happen, what you can start, putting together even on the desktop side to help out and just start where developers can then access it and use it. Because the one thing is, the developer can want to use it, but if it doesn't have access to it and only on the server, frames, you're not going to really be doing it, right? You kind of target the hardware that you have access to, not that you don't. And a lot of times it's hardware even in workstations first that you start testing stuff out, or your desktop, and then you migrate it to the server side stuff. So, because a lot of server side stuff, unless you're going to have a server development environment, gets developed there first, where in many cases having a development environment of a server is beneficial. But these are just ideas that keep flowing in my head. We're still in the early side of the of AI, and that's just one aspect of it. That's not even saying everything else that can be accelerated, right? And different tasks you do during the day can be accelerated in different types of calculations, different types of threading workloads. And as threading continues to move forward, because I develop software during the day, and threading is still something every single day that you work on, you try to get better at it, and you try to get more efficient at it. It is still going to improve going forward, and I think you're going to see better threading in games. You've already started to see that, but I think there's going to be another jump in threading in games, and just being able to make sure that these threads, you can get better threading throughout and not being so single core focused and so single core limited. Because the one thing you don't want to be is always waiting on your main thread, right? That's going to kill you. So these are just some things going through my head. I want to know what your thoughts are on what is AMD up to. What is AMD cooking for this, next generations going forward? There was, I think I read something on, what is it, video cards today, that they might do a Zen4, Zen4c, like Ryzen 3 7040 CPU, or 7440, and maybe the Ryzen 5 7540 mobile CPUs, maybe even desktop, but they might have a combination of Zen4 and Zen4c cores in there, which, by the way, if they do that, that is not a bad option to get their feet wet on seeing how well these kind of work in the market. Just start launching it so Windows can get underneath its belt in Linux to make sure that everything's scheduled properly. And those types of things that if AMD were to do now, especially at the lower end, and start getting those out there, you can start, making sure that these iterations and the lead times for when kernels get updated and everything else, get all those patches and bug fixes in there, so that when you go prime time, well, let's say with a Ryzen, what is it, 8000, 9000, whatever they decide to choose next, those CPUs, if you have the combination of big cores and dense cores, it's off to the races. So that's what I'm kind of thinking. That's what I'm kind of seeing, these big pictures of what they can be able to do. MI300, I think, is just the start. 300A is just a start of what is going to happen. I think there's going to be a lot more things going on there with accelerators and everything else. And it's going to be a really interesting time, I think, in tech moving forward. And maybe I'll take a time, maybe next, take some time every week, every other week or something, and do one on NVIDIA, Intel, etc. And keep it up. Maybe I even go through graphics side of things for AMD. I really hope that they kick into gear there. But I'm just thinking about this stuff, and I thought it was really cool in the past couple weeks, and just seeing of what is all possible in my head. I hope that they come out with some of this stuff, because it would be interesting. Chiplet, I mean, just think of all the chiplets they can kind of put on a chip, right? So with that, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for taking the time to help support Gray Overload and helping this channel grow. I really do appreciate it, and all the support that you've given this channel. It is amazing, and until next time, God bless.